Okay, so welcome to TechFest. It's sunny June, and it's really hot. I don't know if it is with you, but it's really hot in my house this morning. Just going to point out this Slido link across the bottom. If you've not heard already, Jess is going to be using it throughout a talk. She's going to be multitasking, talking, and looking and checking at Slido, and it's a good way for us to kind of interact. We've also got a Slack channel. I'll give you the actual Slack link in a second. Firstly, Alec, do you want to say good morning as well?
Good morning as well. Hello.
Good morning as well.
Yeah, no, I always like to say something just because I clearly like the sound of my own voice, I think. Yeah, no, we had Jess lined up for the fated March slot in TechFest when it was COVID's happening and we don't know where we stand, so it's best to postpone at this point. So our last physical one was in February, I think, and then we postponed March. But we had been really looking forward to that, which was a similar one, but not necessarily talking in a virtual world, just talking, at meetups or tips around those sort of things. So yeah, Jess's experience from being the sort of organizer founder of Women in Tech Nottingham, her involvement in DDD conference, the East Midlands one that was the first one that was the East Midlands that her and Morton run last year. So BGSS, who I work for, sort of sponsored that. So it's great to work with her on that and see, just what could be achieved. So that was brilliant. And also just being part of that sort of Tech Nottingham community that Jess has been a big part of and supporter of as well for a long time. I was on a Tech Nottingham event earlier this month, I think, or last month. And, the way they run events is great. I think, I personally feel I can learn a lot from both that community of how to run great inclusive events. And we're still starting off and learning and really appreciate the, thoughts and wisdom of those folks. So yeah, that was the good morning and sort of semi-intro from me, and I'm really looking forward to hearing the talk as well.
Yeah, for those who've got a few new people, so for those that you don't know, usually TechFest is run from the BGSS office in central Nottingham, but we've been online now since April, and we have been going probably about a year and a half now, Alec, and we always try and pick a broad range of not space kind of tech design, people kind of topics, and we've had a real mixture over the kind of 2 years. We haven't stuck particularly to one particular tech or this design. We've had things around change management, about inclusive design, about testing, data visualization, virtual audio reality, and we always try to keep it a bit of a mixture so that when you come each month, it's a bit of a surprise of what you're going to get. So this month, this is Alex's Slack channel that he's created, and he's determined to make it work. If you want to access, you want to have a chat about what's going on, then please join the Tech Nottingham #TechFastMonthly Slack channel, and we are going to give away an awesome thing for. How are we going to pick this, Alex? Just pick something at random.
At the end of the talk this morning, I'll have a look at everyone who's joined the Slack today and pick at random someone who's joined the channel today. Yeah.
And we are then going to make sure that you get a copy of a book called How to Win the Room, which has been recommended by Jess. It's written by a lady called Viv Groskop. I'm trying to say that correctly. Who's a writer, stand-up comedian, TV and radio presenter, and she's got lots of useful takeaways in there that will help you improve your next speaking opportunity. So share your thoughts. Tell us what you like, what you don't like, or a favourite bit about Jess's talk on the TechFest Monthly Slack channel.
You got a question on the chat from Lee, asking if there'll be a virtual option when things have settled down and people are back in the offices again.
Good question, Lee. It's not something that we've discussed yet. I would imagine we'd be quite keen to get back into the office, but obviously it depends on a whole number of things about how the offices open and how we return back to work. So for the foreseeable future, I would imagine we'd be virtual. In the long term, who knows? Hopefully we'll be back in the office. with some kind of mixture where we could kind of accommodate both.
I'll answer that question and say yes. So I'll do it now. It will happen.
It will.
So,
we just don't know how far in the future that will be.
Yeah.
Okay, so special announcement as well on that theme. Drum roll, Alec. Can you do a drum roll? I did add a special effect, but I don't know if it's going to work. Let's give it a go. Ta-da! Yes, we are now on YouTube. So quite a few people have been asking if the talks that we've been doing have been recorded. So we have created a TechFest YouTube channel, and we've got 2 subscribers. Yes, come on. But the main,
I'm not one of them.
Come on. So we've got the last 2 talks, which have been really great. One from Mario Discris. I can't pronounce his first surname. Di Cristofano. Yeah. Yes. Around agile and swimming against the waterfall and his kind of personal experience. And we've also got Rob Van Tol's working from home, which I know a few people have requested. There's a way to reflect on some of the challenges that people are facing at the minute. So take a look, subscribe, and if you think it's worth us keeping it up, put a few comments in there as well. Notable knots. Jess, do you want to talk about these? These are both your recommendations.
Yeah, can do. So .NET Knots, run by Pete, and now I've joined, so that'll be interesting.
Yay!
It's been a while since I've been involved in Meetup organisation. We are this month with Ian Johnson, and I was hoping it was going to be on the slide. And a second speaker who will be extra special. On Monday, the following month, we have Mark Grendel, who will be talking about gRPC, which will be excellent. So come along, it's a good group of people. And Project Function is something that is close to quite a few of our hearts. They have a new project going, which is Access for All. So for those who don't know about Project Function, they run a free boot camp to improve diversity in the tech industry. It's completely free, run in the evenings, and it's run by some amazing students and a couple of other volunteers now as well from the industry itself in Nottingham. They now have Access for All, where they're trying to provide internet and laptops for those who are attending, just to try and help them be able to do it, because a lot of people can't afford to have Wi-Fi and the devices you need to code. So do support them. They've got a Patreon at the moment in various levels. The lowest one's £10 a month, which a lot of us can afford. So yeah, help them out.
Yeah, I didn't know about this, Jess. So this sounds like a really amazing project that the tech community in Nottingham should really get behind and support. I think there are a lot of people that would benefit massively from it.
Yeah,
so.
Run 4 waves now, I think. Rizwana Akmal, who's spoken at a number of events in Nottingham, she's one of the main founders of it. And it's really awesome what they've done. I don't know if Lex is on today. No, she's not. Lex is an ex Project Function student, so is Bal. So there's quite a few people who we know who have been part of it. It's really, really worthwhile.
Yeah.
I'll just pop those links to those events, by the way, in the Slack channel. So fruits already.
So what's coming up next month? Let's see if we can get a vet. A vet, can you talk?
Hello.
Hi.
Hey.
Morning. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I'm good.
Tell us about this journey then, about feeding baby lambs and artificially inseminating cows.
Yeah, so I basically, when people ask me sort of like, oh, how did I get into my job role as a BA? I sort of take them on this journey, and they just get wowed every time, because they're just thinking, hang on a minute, you started off at a mushroom farm, and I'm like, yeah, that was my first thing. And then I've done like so many different things, so I never really knew what I wanted to do when I grew up. So I kept like offering and volunteering to do different things, and I've done such a wide range of job roles. It's quite interesting to other people. I just think it's normal, but apparently it's not. Which has got me into the position that I'm at now, which is sort of woman in tech, loving what I do, fully embracing my job role and stuff. But yeah, I've done a wide range of stuff. It's quite funny. I've got some interesting pictures to add. So yeah, it should be a good giggle.
I want to hear more about a mushroom farm. Can we have at least 10 minutes on that?
Yeah, no, honestly, it's, I have to keep my eye on the time, because otherwise we sort of go down a tangent, and I've been talking about artily, like collecting bull semen for quite a while, so it's all there, honestly.
Shout out to always having breakfast. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's going to be great. So we've got a vet joining us next month on the 30th. Vet's a business solutions architect at OEGen. Is that how I pronounce that right?
Yeah, well, OEGen, yeah.
OEGen. And she's going to tell us about her journey from that end, the mushrooms and the bulls and things, to what she's doing now, and what it feels like, I guess, to be a woman in tech. So thanks, Yvette. We're looking forward to that.
Thank you.
If you want to speak at TechFest, you're inspired by Jess's talk today, whether it's for a full kind of talk, which is around about 25-30 minutes, or just for five minutes. Jess came up with the idea of a snowball talks, maybe around Christmas, which I thought was an interesting concept. I'm not sure exactly what that is yet, but I'm sure we can work it out as it gets closer to the time. We'd love to hear from you. We've got a really brilliant tech community in and around Nottingham area. Lots of bright and interesting people with unique experience, and it'd be great if you could share yours with everybody else. So get in touch. So here we are. Jess, finally, we're going to do a bit of a switcheroo now. So Jess, do you want to flick your screen in, and we'll just make sure that everyone can see it okay?
Yep. Hopefully that should work. Cool.
Yay, you're in.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'm not really sure how to follow up from bull semen and mushroom farming, to be honest, but I'll give it a go. So for those who don't know me or missed Alex and Paul's very friendly introduction, I'm Jess. I kind of float around the Nottingham community doing various different things. So I'm a co-founder of DDD East Midlands Conference. I'm currently a co-organizer of .NET Knots, and I've spoken internationally at events, both online and in person. I do miss the in-person ones because I got a lot of free travel out of it, no lying there. But today I'm going to talk about speaking in a virtual world, and this talk is in two parts. The first part is kind of coming up with an idea how you actually create the talk abstract, which is part of the talk that I was originally going to do with Morten back in March before COVID landed. And the second half is how to do it virtually. So how to make yourself comfortable, how to make it engaging for audiences, etc. On that note, this has been shared on the TechFest Slack channel, which I'll be plugging for Alec throughout this talk. It's a Slido link. What this is you submit, you can put any name you want. If you don't want to be known, that's fine. Just put frog, rabbit, whatever you fancy. But it's just so that I can ask you questions throughout the talk, get a bit of feedback, and I should be able to see it on my screen as I go. So I'll give a couple of seconds for people to get the link. It probably won't show anything at the moment because I don't have a question live, but it will do shortly. If you need it, it's on the Slack channel, so just hop on there. But there's one thing I can't really not talk about, and that's that 2020 is really strange. Nobody could have predicted a pandemic, and then all of the protests that have happened, and our work environment changing. So going from a lot of office-based companies to being kind of forced into remote very quickly and without preparation. It's a really bizarre year, definitely the strangest one in my 30 years so far. And one of the things that people have asked is whether it's changed talk creation at all. Now, the simple answer, nah, it hasn't really. There is some things that have changed. So the sort of topics that are talked about a lot in meetups now have changed quite a bit. Whereas before, talks on remote talks or even giving virtual presentations probably wouldn't have been that well attended. You'd have less attendance than technical talks or talks on design and practices, etc. Now those are becoming more and more popular because people are having to learn about it faster. We're having to cope in this very strange situation. even talks kind of on dealing with living in a pandemic seem to be very popular. So the talks that are coming about have changed quite a bit, but the talk creation itself hasn't really changed at all. It's more about the presenting of it that has been affected by all of this. Just so I can get a gauge, if you can go on to Slido, and I will make the question live now. There we go, that should be coming up. What kind of talk experience does this audience have? By the way, this is really fun. I should probably share this because I can see all of the responses live kind of popping up on my screen. So at the moment, we've got about 93, 94% doing internal talks. About half of you have done lightning talks. And then, oh, good, like 50% have done meetup talks, and about the same for conference as well. So some good experienced speakers here. I better make sure I'm talking about the right stuff then. This is good. I mean, internal talks are great as well. So this applies to conference talks, meetup talks, internal talks and otherwise. But one of the problems people have is actually coming up with an idea in the first place. I'm going to spend a short amount of time just going through the various different types of talks you can do and how you can come up with those ideas. The first point to note is that nothing is easy until you know it. It's easier to say than to realize, I guess, but at the end of the day, we all had to learn our ABCs, and now we know them. Though to this point, even at 30, if I have to alphabetize things, I have to sing that stupid song because I can't do it off the top of my head. So maybe I haven't learned them as well as I should have, but at least I know them. And it's the same for tech talks. It's the same for any of your jobs in technology. If I look back to the speakers who I really admire and the first talks I ever saw by them, it's probably something like using Git, the very basics of using Git. Now, today, I use that day to day in my job without even really thinking about it. It's second nature to me. I wouldn't really think of it as a really difficult skill anymore because I know it. But back then it was mind blowing. These people were so smart, and how did they make my life so much easier? That was amazing. And it carries on like that. The more you know, you kind of just sway it to one side as if it's easy because you know it. It's easier to acknowledge what you don't know than it is to acknowledge what other people don't know. You just assume everybody knows everything you know, which isn't the case. So think about something that you've learned over time that's made your life easier, and you can talk about it. And the best bit is about this is that you've got the experience, you've got the know-how to talk about it with confidence and with experience. So nothing's easy until you know it, and you'll benefit people a lot more. A little added extra to this is that introductory talks are incredibly popular. The reason being is because you'll get people who want to learn about the thing. You'll get people who are just interested but want to find out a bit more. And you'll get people who want to brush up on their basics again. Whereas if you go for the more in-depth talks, you're only going to get those people who really want to know about that thing, which makes your audience a little bit narrower. What do you get excited about? Here's another poll. This one will be quite fun for me because I'll get a nice word bubble, which will be very pretty at the end of it, and I get to steal all your ideas. Now, what do you get excited about is an interesting one to talk about. Yvette, the code for Slido should be on Slack, on the Tech Monthly. Alec, what's the code for your Slack? What's it called?
Yeah, so it's TechFirst-monthly. Yeah, so link to the Slack in general is on the Meetup channel, and an email I sent out to all members as well before the talk.
Super, thank you. Sorry, Yvette, I only just saw that. So what do you get excited about? Now, a couple of people I know refer to me as Scrappy Doo because I get a little bit feisty about things, and I'm also 5'2", so to be honest, I probably lose in most fights, but I'll give it a good effort. So what are you excited about isn't just like, this thing's really cool and everybody should be using it. It's the best technology ever. It's going to change the face of technology. It can also be that thing that really niggles you, that thing that gets you in a rant. And for me, I find this by talking about my job or things I'm interested in with my other half, Morton. And when I've gone to make a flippant comment and found I'm still angry about it, like 30 minutes later, I'm still talking about it, I realized that I've got to talk there, because I've clearly got enough content that I can just go on for a while as long as I remove the rant. And that could just be, I don't understand why people don't know this, or how are they not doing it in this way? And it's not their fault, they've never learnt it, but this is an opportunity for me or you to teach that thing. Make it so that people know that they can work in a different way. And it also makes your life a bit easier as well, because you're not having to explain this over and over and over again to people. But what do you get excited about? This can be a happy excited, it can be a ranty excited. I don't know who put red wine into the word bubble, but I love you. That is an excellent topic just there. I probably
think I
join
know
you
who
on
that
one.
was.
It might have been Alec.
It
Yeah.
wasn't actually you.
Well, you've got a friend, Alec.
I know.
I will share this word bubble at the end. I'll keep it going for now while I continue my rant about talking. Another way of thinking about talk topics is, what lessons did you learn? This can be, I wanted to learn about a thing and these are the steps I took. Here are the resources. Here are the things that really tripped me up. That's fine. For me, I do something that I wouldn't necessarily recommend, especially to those with an anxious disposition, which I actually have, so I don't know why I do this. But if I want to learn about something because it's going to be useful in work or otherwise, I sign up to do a talk about it. And this just puts a fire under my bum, because I know that I'm going to have to learn it and take questions on it. So I've signed up to do a talk now, and there's no getting out of it. And that will force me to learn that thing. It gives me an artificial deadline, which is useful for me, but it can also put the fear of God into you. So not really for everybody. But without the artificial deadline, what lessons have you learnt in doing a thing? And then the other one, which can be very interesting, is what is learnt from your experience. There's two sides for this coin. One is, this can help get over some people's imposter syndrome with talking. The reason being is that nobody has the same experience as you. So somebody saying you are wrong about your experience is kind of a douchey thing to do, and it's also incorrect. So you can talk about your experience using something or learning about something. You can talk about your experience breaking the entire website. We have all done it at some point, it's fine. But then people can learn from your experience, but also see a new point of view on the topic. And the nice thing as a speaker is that you can't be wrong, because it's from your point of view. It's not you saying that this is the rules. The other thing is, I quite like talks about learning from experience because they've saved me a lot of grey hair. So it would make dyeing my hair purple a bit easier, to be honest. But going to talks where they've gone, I really screwed up, and this is how we recovered from it, this is how to avoid that problem, is interesting, because it's often things that aren't shown in documentation or otherwise. The one thing to be careful with these kind of talks is, if you go too niche again, going for something that's general that everyone can understand and relate to, you'll do fine. If you're going for something that is really, really in particular in a certain language or technology that only a few people will come across, you'll probably have less interest in the talk because people won't be able to use it. The exception to that being is the kind of entertaining catastrophes. I went to a talk by somebody at Google who talked about how they took down a number of data centers, knocking out Google in several countries for a few hours, and how they didn't get fired. It was a post-mortem talk. And that was really interesting, and it was a really good talk on no blame culture. But I really hope most of us aren't taking out data centers. So with these kind of concepts, you should be able to pull up a bullet point list. You don't necessarily have to sit by yourself and write these down. Have a conversation with someone, see if there's anything that really piques your interest and piques theirs as well. It's quite good to start these talks as a communal thing, because eventually you are going to be talking to people, and there's no avoiding that. The next thing that's a little bit tricky is creating a talk description. This is something that I struggled with for a lot of time, but here's a few pointers on how to do that. The talk descriptions are important because not only are you It's giving them to meetups, to conferences, to apply to speak to them. But also this is how you get your audience. So it's a big advertising ploy in a way. Firstly, you want to be clear. This comes in numerous forms, but plain English is the best. We're quite lucky in that a lot of countries speak our language as a secondary language or a primary language, which means we can get away with just writing abstracts in our native. But nonetheless, English is complicated. I'm still getting it wrong, and I'm 30. I'm sure most of us are, and it's my primary language, and I've lived in England all my life. But you want to avoid jargon, and jargon is a deadly thing in our industry. There's a lot of it. There's internal jargon to your companies, and then there's just jargon in general. Things that are well known about, such as microservices and blockchain, these fancy made up words, they're fine because a lot of people will know what you mean. But anything that's a little bit less used might not necessarily be clear, and you might lose people. The other thing is to make sure that your language is inclusive. This can be in terms of not using TLAs or 3-letter acronyms unless you're actually saying what they are. As the organizer of DDD East Midlands Conference, where everyone thinks it's about domain-driven design, very familiar with the fact that 3-letter acronyms are evil. It's a pain point. People keep thinking our conference is not a general conference, and it's a real shame because we lose people. But you want to be able to, you want audiences to know what you're talking about rather than just assuming based on a few letters. And you want to make sure that your language is inclusive in general so you're not blocking anyone out. What value do you add? This is what people are going to take away from your talk. So are they going to leave knowing how to build on a new framework? Are they going to leave with ideas on how they can submit to meetups near them? And how is your talk different? Now this comes in, again, multiple different forms. It can be that you have a very particular experience, that you are a junior coming into this world, that you used to work on a mushroom farm and now you're doing crazy tech stuff. Your experience in itself can make a talk different, because at the end of the day, there's probably going to be 50 of us who are submitting a talk on design concepts, microservices, blockchain, or whatever the fancy word of our industry is in that week. We want to know why your version is better than somebody else's, and not necessarily better, but just slightly different, a little bit interesting. The other way to do this is to make it different with a hook, make it actually different. So local superstar Andrew Seward has done one talk which has been amazing, and that has been root cause analysis of Jurassic Park. So how he's made it different is by applying a much loved movie into his talk. And what this talk was about is RCAs, or root cause analysis. Normally you have an incident and you want to find out how you could have avoided it, how you can avoid it happening in future, what happened that made this thing explode. What he does is goes through all the mistakes that were made in Jurassic Park and get people to put up post-its. So do a group RCA on the actual film, and it creates different results every time. It's really entertaining. But as you read the description, it looks different. It looks fun, so people go. Because not only are talks informative, but they also can be really entertaining. So you can play around with this idea quite a bit. And just in terms of brief structure, this is how I write my abstracts. It's not the be all and end all rule, but hopefully it might be helpful to you. So I start off with what problem's being solved. In this case, talking is difficult in front of an audience, coming up with an idea is hard. Come along to the talk and hopefully we can help you. And a hook. In my case, probably my experience for this. So I've been on both sides of the fence as an organizer and as a speaker. Briefly, what does the talk include? We'll go through how you can create a talk idea, how you can make an abstract, and how to present comfortably from home. Who is it useful to, and what will they take away from the talk? It's useful to anyone. Everyone should be trying to talk. It's a great thing and you'll gain a lot from it. And you'll take away, hopefully, the tips and also the enthusiasm to go ahead and do your first talk or next one. The who is it useful to is really kind of key for me, because it means that people can opt into your talk. it's not that they will come and then suddenly know everything and feel like they've wasted their time, or even worse in my mind is that a junior goes to a really in-depth talk and feels out of their depth and panics. I would hate for that to happen. So I quite like that extra little bit into these abstracts. But it gives enough information to your organisers and to your attendees. Right, I've zoomed through that. And when it comes to writing the talk as well, sorry, Alec, sorry, Paul, but really don't panic about it until somebody's asked you to do it. Just submit some talks, submit some ideas, see which ones are popular, and then write the talk. It takes a lot of time and effort to write a talk, so I tend to go for the scattergun approach. Here's a few different ideas. Which one do you want? Okay, I'll write that one, which is probably why I was still doing these slides last night. Didn't admit to that. When it comes to presenting, as I say, it's a bit different these days. So right now, this is kind of how I'm feeling. If you can't tell, I am a fan of Jurassic Park as well. It's really strange. I'm sitting in my spare bedroom in my house, which is boiling hot because it's also in the attic. And I'm talking to my webcam, where normally I would be standing in front of all you fine people and getting feedback from nods and giggles and, you know, taking the mickey out of somebody who's fallen asleep. It's quite hard to get that physical feedback. And for a lot of speakers, that's how we get a lot of our energy as well. We want to talk to you. We want to interact with you. It's part of the reason why we do all of this. I want to know if you're still in your pajamas. And right now, I'm currently in a room speaking to myself. It's a very strange thing. But realistically, I'm not alone. This is slightly different in terms of this setup, but for a lot of cases, what the following is kind of applicable. This is what my normal setup looks like. I haven't spent a lot of money on my setup. It's pretty much the same as it was before COVID. So on one side, I tend to have the people who I'm talking to, then I've got my slides up next to my webcam here, and any notes, and a very key timer. And then I tend to have some sort of view that the audience can see as well on my other screen, just so I can make sure that the tech's working. But that's key. I'm pointing at my screen, I realize that you've got a different screen you're looking on. See, this is the problem with virtual presentation. Having the faces of the people you're talking to is really useful on the screen, because suddenly I can talk to you, Andrew. I didn't realize you were on here actually, because I don't have your face here, and there I am praising your talk. So I hope you're enjoying that. And Carol, who is fantastic, I can start talking to all of you and be interacting with you a bit more. And it's also nice because it reminds you that you're actually talking to people rather than just staring at your webcam. I only get to pick on Paul and Alec in this current setup because I can't see all your fine faces. So I'll make the most out of that, hopefully. But it is really, really useful just to have some idea of the people who are there. The other thing, which I think Paul brought up earlier with his smiley face, is my webcam. It's got eyes on it. I actually got this tip from Dylan Beattie. He's got googly eyes on his. And the idea is just to remind me to look at the webcam occasionally, because otherwise I'll be looking at my screens and all around the room, which isn't necessarily engaging in the fact that it doesn't feel like I'm talking to you, which I want to be. I want to be talking to you in a real room, if I'm honest. But hey, we're living in a virtual world and this is how we deal with it. So that helps in terms of actual, not only engagement with your audience, but feeling like you're not alone. There are many different ways to present though. So as I say, this is my kind of setup. This is actually from my birthday, hence the flowers on the desk. So a couple of weeks ago. I now have a boom arm so that my mic doesn't pick up my keyboard sounds, but that's more for work rather than presenting. But my setup is on the cheap and incredibly simple. I have a good webcam. I've got one light that cost me 12 quid from Amazon, which just helps in terms of being able to see my face no matter the time of day. My mic, I did spend a bit of money on, but to be honest, you don't have to, as long as it's not your laptop mic, because laptop mics are terrible. Try and get an external mic if you are going to do online presenting. It'll make the quality of your talks so much better. But I tend to sit down for my talks because I have limited space, I have limited budget. And after this, I'll plug in my work laptop and carry on working throughout the day. So this is kind of where I live now. It's okay for me because I'm used to talking in this kind of setting. I do a lot of meetings like this. There is another option though. Ooh. Sorry, that is the other point. I do have my notes up. I don't tend to use notes, but it can be really useful to have your notes next to your webcam if you are kind of relying on them, because I can quickly flick to what I'm supposed to be saying and then go back to talking to you. So this is one advantage to virtual speaking, is that I wouldn't be able to do this in a real talk. Having these referral points are really useful for a lot of new time speakers or speakers who tend to rely on scripts. I can't, because I lose my point and then I panic. But if you are that sort of person, use this, because you won't get this in real life. Unfortunately, you'll be diving across the stage to look at your notes and then coming back again. So it is a lot more easy in a virtual environment if you are going to use bullet point notes. The other way to present is standing. So this is a picture of Dylan. He has a full setup at home. He's got green screen. As you can see, it's quite a snazzy setup. But realistically, you can actually do this on the cheap as well if you've got enough room. Just make sure that you've got a relatively plain background, nothing distracting or nothing that you wouldn't want the public to see behind you. A lot of us are presenting from our bedrooms, so an unmade bed and various appliances that might be found in your bedroom, you might not want showing on the internet. But you don't have to have a green screen. You can buy a cheap lapel mic from any online store, and then you have the freedom to move. You want to put your camera to about eye level so that you can see your torso. You don't want to be zoomed out too far because you'll be a tiny little person that people can squish on the screen. You want to still be clear, but it gives you enough room to wave your hands around, to roam. The one tip I would give when doing standing speaking, especially if you decide to go with a green screen, is not to have your slides on the green screen. I've seen quite a few cases where just people have wandered in front of the text and not even realized. It doesn't make the experience very good, and your audience won't be able to read what you want them to see. So avoid putting slides on green screens. Still try to have those on a screen. The other thing with both of these setups is I tend to have at least one screen where I can see what the audience interaction is like. So I have the quiz on my phone at the moment, and I tend to have one screen which has the slides as you can see them. This is to make sure that there's no lag, etc., that I wouldn't be aware of otherwise. The other thing, which is key to both physical and virtual presentations, I'm sorry, but I'm not on Slack at the moment. And that's because I have trolls of friends who'd be sending rude messages that would just put a little pop-up onto my screen over my slides constantly, and they can't be trusted. Try to mute anything that might have a pop-up on it. You don't want your emails or your Slack messages coming up in the middle of a meeting, especially if you have those kind of mates who would just send that rude GIF just to throw you off. I've had it before and it does throw you off. With presenting virtually as well, getting into the mindset. You don't need to have a crazy Slack or a Slack background or using something like Snapchat to change your hair color. Though, as I mentioned earlier, Snapchat's great for adding makeup on if you really can't be bothered to put it on. It saved my life at work. I don't really wear makeup at all. But today I got up, I washed my hair, I brushed it, which is madness. I actually put on real makeup. I went and put on actually some smart clothes that weren't t-shirt and a hoodie, just like I would for a normal in-person conference talk. And that's because it just gets me into that mindset of, I'm presenting now, this is fine. It's a small thing, but I find it easier to present once I feel like I'm supposed to be in a kind of professional environment where I'm chatting to all of you folks, rather than sitting in my pajamas, especially as I'm in a place that I would be sitting in my pajamas watching Netflix. So it gives me that little bit of distinction. Whether this helps you or not, I don't know, but it certainly helps me. And then audience interaction. So as I mentioned earlier, if you have the faces of the people who you're talking to on screen, it makes it a lot easier. I'd quite happily be talking to Jamie, Ian, Emma, otherwise. I've only got your names, unfortunately, at the moment. But it's great because I'd be able to see your facial reactions. I'd be able to see when it's really clear on your face that you disagree with something I'm saying, or somebody's laughing. and it gets that conversation going. It makes it like a real meetup again. And I really enjoy that because I miss real meetups. But it makes it different from just watching a YouTube video where you're seeing somebody do a talk for the umpteenth time that they did 2 years ago, because you're involved. And it's also nice as a speaker because you feel like you're not just, recording a video, you're actually talking to people, which we're all a little bit extroverted. Us speak a lot, so we kind of need to talk to people, especially when we've been locked in a house for 3 months. And tools such as Slido are very useful as well. The number of different tools, this just happens to be the one that I use, but whereas in person you'll be able to go put your hand up if, or do some sort of questions, it's really hard to do it in this kind of environment. So I use something like Slido, which has quizzes, ratings, word bubbles, multiple choice questions, and otherwise, as you've seen in this talk, so I can gauge the experience of the people who are attending, so I can get their points of view, so I can steal their talk ideas for later on. And I will put up that word bubble in a second as well, at the very end of this talk. There are numerous resources to this, and it's actually a really hard talk to do in 30 minutes. I'm actually surprised I've pretty much got there, because it is really in depth. I will be sharing Noticed on Slack, Twitter, etc. after this. I'll see if Alec will email it out as well. This is where I list all of my resources and the slides. It's got everything from the How to Talk series by DDD East Midlands, blogs by Scott Hanselman on how to make a cheap online setup so that you can present from home well. It talks about various books, blogs about different microphone setups, which is incredibly useful. And a couple of books as well, including the How to Own a Room, which will be given out to some lucky winner who has spoken on Slack, because Alec is pushing Slack like a madman. And of course, you can get in touch. I live on Twitter, in all honesty, because I only communicate through GIFs or GIFs, depending on how you prefer to say it. So feel free to get in touch on there. I'll also hang around on here afterwards as well, if there are any questions. And I'll try and stay on Slack today too. I'm going to close the word bubble and see if we can get some results up. But
I think that was a record. Only one GIF in your talk this time.
Yeah, actually, it's unusual for me because I normally do a lot more drawings in my talks.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, I managed to not completely plague people with my doodles this time.
I appreciate a more typographic approach, Jess.
I only understand drawings. I don't do this writing business. Though interestingly, on our word bubble, baking seems to be very popular. So we need some automated baking talks is what I'm getting from this. And I'm sure you want to plug again the amazing Yvette for next month, which I'm definitely going to come here about ball semen now.
Shall we open up to questions first, though?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. So, have you got any tips for your kind of mic setup? You said you bought a boom arm as well to stop the keyboard noise. How have you got it set up? Is it?
Oh, I see if I can change my webcam. Hang on. Hey, that's my boom arm. So there's numerous ways to set up a boom. I got a Rode boom arm, which is one of the higher end ones. It's actually used for musicians. I don't know why I got something that was quite so aggressive. We can get them for like 20 quid on Amazon. The reason is because the type of mic I have, which is my Blue Yeti, it picks up vibrations off the desk. So if I type even on a non-mechanical keyboard, it sounds like shotguns through my microphone. So I got a boom arm. You can set it sideways or otherwise. Actually, there's loads of different YouTube videos on how to set up these. I've got my mic upside down because then it's not sticking up in front of my face. I've got a very tiny face, as Morten tells me very kindly. So I'm trying to keep it out of the way as much as possible. Though it does look like I'm podcasting constantly. But yeah, in terms of my keeping it off the desk, keeps the vibrations from when you're putting down your drink, from when you're typing. So that's quite useful for that. There's a great blog by Dylan, which is going to be my resource list, actually, which goes through the different types of microphones and how you want to set them up, which is where I got most of my advice from.
Ah, great. Yeah, 'cause I think, I don't know, a few people have mentioned on the Slack channel, but it's making a massive difference, the quality of sound by using a proper microphone. And I don't know about you, but the amount of Zoom meetings where somebody's got their computer mic on and there's somebody cutting the grass outside and there's kids in the back, it makes it quite hard to concentrate. But having that quality of audio makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, this microphone's particularly good. As you say, different microphones have like omnidirectional pickup or otherwise. This particular mic, I can select what I want. So whether it just picks up my voice or picks up the whole room, which is useful for me because eventually when we can have friends around, I might be able to have somebody here and record something with them, which would be great. Mm. The pop filter is also very useful, especially as someone who enunciates. Because it stops that sound of spit when you're saying your T's and P's. It's like, it costs like a couple of quid. It's not very expensive, but it makes a world of difference to the quality of your audio. But yeah, audio is very key when doing this kind of thing.
Yeah, I think I'm going to need a really big one of those.
Like a mask.
Have we got any questions from the floor? Has anybody got any thoughts or questions about Jess's talk or approach? I really liked it. I think it is a really kind of methodical way to think about the talk thing, and it's something I've been doing over the last couple of years. And the first time I did it, I was petrified. Actually, it was Tech on Toast, when this used to be Tech on Toast all those years back. But since then, you got any tips for that kind of getting over that initial?
If I'm honest, I'm still petrified every time I give a talk. It's got a lot better. When I first did talks, I used to run to the toilet and vomit. I was really, really anxious with it. And I don't do that anymore. So that's quite nice. The thing that really struck with me was I thought about the worst talk I've ever seen. I've been to quite a few conferences and meetups, and I can remember the content of the talk. I can't remember the person who gave it. And that kind of realization that the very worst thing that could happen was to be forgotten, I realized I was really worrying about nothing. And that's okay. I'd rather people forgot me than remembered I tripped off the stage. So that helped with the anxiety quite a bit. The other thing is just rehearsing. Not to over rehearse, but to make sure that you have enough content to fill the time. So when I do a talk like this, if I'm doing a 30-minute talk, I try to aim for 45 minutes of content when I'm speaking by myself, because I know that nerves will kick in no matter what. And although I speak quickly, I'll speak in even faster if I'm getting through a talk. So that makes sure that I've still got enough to carry on through.
So we've got Peter Cranston's got a question. Peter, you should be able to talk now. Do you want to see if you can ask Jess? See if we can make the technology work. No, hold on a sec. We are technically challenged.
Yeah, this is the one problem you have at virtual meetups. You don't have in-person ones.
Try that.
Rob Waring was asking what you sound like without a filter.
Oh, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yay! Hey. Morning, Peter. Cool. How you doing?
Morning. Yeah, good. Thanks. Yeah, thanks for that, Jess. Really interesting. I guess my question is just you mentioned kind of sometimes taking ideas from other talks. Just wondering how far you feel it's appropriate to kind of like borrow ideas or inspiration from other talks or kind of content or training videos that you've seen.
That's a really great question. So if you are feeling like you're over borrowing, always reference the speaker that you've borrowed from. At the end of the day, there's always going to be some crossover with talks. Funnily enough, there was a quote from Kevlin Henney about this. He does a lot of different talks, but he admits that he constantly borrows from other people because he's inspired by other people. And at the end of the day, even with technology, with design, there's only a limited amount of content there is in the world. But you can bring your own spin to things and also kind of create more content by borrowing from many different people, but also adding your own contributions to it. What I'd say is, if you're taking a direct quote or slides or otherwise, if you can, reach out to the person you're borrowing it from to let them know, but always credit that person. With this, a lot of the actual content probably comes more from experience. But with the creation of the abstract, I got advice from several different people: Niall Merrigan, Todd Gardner, Dylan Beattie. I will point out that most of my mentors are men, but I don't see a problem with that. But I've talked to them about it, and at the end of the day, because it's been kind of manipulated by multiple different points of view, it's now its own content, so it's fine. So yeah, all I'd say is if you're taking direct stuff, do quote who your source is. Otherwise, I wouldn't bother about it too much, because we're all talking about the same things at the end of the day. I hope that helps.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Peter.
cool. Thanks.
So I've got a question, Jess. Well, if you've got any tips or any thoughts actually on how do you avoid, I didn't know this was a thing, but crutch words. So I'm terrible at erring. I'm erring all the time. Have you got any techniques to help avoid that? Or
I'm an awful ummer, and I'm aware of it. There are a few different techniques you can do. Some people go as far as going to see a speech therapist to actually get rid of those. If you, there you go. If you can get into the practice of pausing instead of saying your crutch words. If you become aware of doing it, pausing and kind of looking into the distance, much like Joey Smellafart acting, kind of makes it look like you're thinking rather than using those R words. I don't find too much of a problem with them personally, because it's just a part of speech. Unless you're doing a podcast or something like that where people are only hearing your voice, it's less noticeable if you're speaking on a camera or in person, unless you're doing it a lot. I have known an example of a speaker who tried to replace the words or crutch words with a different word, and it went dramatically noticeable. They replaced ums with cool, and then every 2 seconds, like, cool, and then carrying on. And that was much more noticeable than just a standard speech deflect. So I wouldn't worry about it too much, but if you do notice it and it's throwing you off, then there's lots of professionals who can help.
yeah, it's definitely something that I found quite a challenge, particularly that and you don't even notice you're doing it, do you? Until you watch yourself, particularly now, we're in this kind of video world, you'll watch yourself in a video afterwards and you think, wow, how many Earths were in?
To be honest, I think my biggest problem early speaking was swearing. I swear like a trooper in my normal kind of day-to-day, but I've managed to get out of that, and ums seem a lot worse, like a lot less of a sin than constantly swearing throughout talks. So
We're very pleased that you've toned it down for us this morning.
yeah, I got out of that. I realized it was quite exclusive in terms of audience.
I guess just a reflection. I don't do a huge amount of sort of conference talking, that sort of thing necessarily, but I'm lucky in that I thrive off some of that nervous energy. I think that's never gone away, despite all the things that I have done in a public speaking type setting, and that happens to work for me, despite that moment of still fear and doubt just before you go on. That never goes away. I think personally people can build things up by doing an internal sort of lunch and learn to a few people, and then doing that as then a lightning talk, which a lot of the women in tech and Technotium have a monthly lightning talk, which is maybe up to 5 minutes, or 10 if you're Andrew, because you get lasered because you've gone on too long, and building up from there. It's not that you're going straight in to talk as the one monthly Technotium speaker, although do that if you want to throw yourself in at the deep end. And I think there are lots of opportunities for people to do that, like this is a a nice forum in which we're still looking for speakers. So yeah,
it's a personal thing as well, and one of the advantages to virtual meetups for me is I find it a lot easier to speak in front of strangers than I do people I know.
Mm-hmm.
Again, because my friends are evil and they'll take the mick at me. Only joking. I know that Andrew and Carol are on here and they're very, very nice, but I know that they'll remember what I'm doing, rather than strangers who are coming to see a random person talk and then not really bothering ever again, apart from on Twitter. So I find that easier mentally for me. And with virtual meetups, it means I can do a meetup in Portugal if I want to, and it not really costing any problems. The other thing, I had another point and it's gone out of my head. Oh yes, in terms of speaking, don't think of it as just like meetup speaking, conference speaking, etc. I think you were hitting on something really well there, Alec, with the internal talks. Speaking brings a skill set that you'll need in day-to-day work eventually. You're going to have to talk to stakeholders, clients, otherwise you're going to have to explain technical ideas in a way that everybody understands. And practicing talks like this is a great way to practice that skill set. So I think it really helps you in your workplace as well.
Yeah, and I think also, as you know, people that listen to talks internally and lightning talks and people speak, it's really important to give feedback and you know, also support the person through that, but also if there are some constructive things, then you know, definitely share that in the right way, because I think, you know, we're all you know, still novices at this, is how much have we done it. So you know, I think that process of giving that feedback is really important as well, particularly those internal ones. You can go to a lunch and learn and think, yeah, thanks very much, but actually, you know, have a bit of you know, a dialogue around that. As difficult sometimes as that is, I think that's really important as well. What I will point out is Anna on the TechFest Monthly Slack channel pointed out that August is the Technotium Lightning Talks. So great timing if you do want to give it a go as well.
Oh, and for anyone who's was wondering what a snowball talk is earlier, it's like an evil lightning talk. So somebody starts off with a 5-minute talk and the next person has to build up upon it. And it builds up like a snowball. It's a very, very challenging type of talk to do, but it is quite a bit of fun.
So that's something that we might do in November TechFest, we shall see. Alec, have you got somebody that you want to nominate from the Slack channel before we wrap things up? I'm just conscious.
I have, yes. So I'm conscious it's 9:01 and people might be dropping off to meetings, so absolutely understand that. What I will do is, if you have been to a physical one, I'm going to steal the screen sharing for a second.
Go for it.
To the wheel. Can we see the wheel?
We can see the wheel.
So
I'm liking this wheel.
Shaz is the winner.
Okay, Shaz, thank you. Ta-da!
Well done.
We will
be in touch.
Yes, we'll get in touch with you and we'll organise some kind of courier type thing to get you a copy of that book. But otherwise, thank you very much, Jess. That was really, really informative. And,
thank you for having me.
Really lovely to have you join us and share some of that brilliant insight into virtual speaking and speaking generally. Really appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
It's nice to speak to someone. I'm trapped in my room.
So hopefully we'll see you again next month, where you're talking about lambing and balls and all sorts of things. I'm really looking forward to Yvette's talk. But thank you very much, everyone, for joining us this morning. Have a great month and see you in July.
See you later.
Take care. Bye.